There's a kind of pay cut that never shows up on a pay stub. Elena got a promotion in February. Better title, bigger number, the whole thing. By May, she was Googling how to read her own escrow statement at 11 at night, because for the first time in her life the math wasn't adding up, and she does math for a living. She's a nurse case manager in Reno. Her entire job is telling other people what their insurance will and won't cover. She didn't lose her job. Nobody cut her hours. She got a raise. And somehow, she ended up with less money than she had in January. That's not a typo, and it's not bad budgeting. That's what this video is actually about. I'm going to walk you through 4 pieces of mail. Real categories, not real names, that quietly take money out of a raise before you ever get to spend it. Then I want to show you 2 dates on the calendar that are going to do the same thing to millions of people at once, on purpose, with no debate and no vote. If any of this lands, stick around and hit subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it tells me to keep making these. Before we get to Elena's mailbox, we need to talk about a word that's been doing a lot of quiet damage. Middle class. Most surveys define it the same lazy way. Anywhere from 2/3 to double the national median income for your household size. That range is enormous. A family barely covering rent and a family with a boat in the driveway can both get filed under the same label. That's not a class. That's a shrug wearing a spreadsheet. And yes, the share of Americans in that band has shrunk over the last 50 years. The bar chart version of this story says the middle class is disappearing. What it usually leaves out is that most of the people who left the middle didn't fall. They climbed. Upper-income households grew a lot faster than lower-income ones shrank. So if incomes went up, why does it feel like everyone's treading water? Because income was never the whole story. The old middle class wasn't really a tier of earnings. It was a risk-sharing deal. Somebody else carried the big, unpredictable costs, so your paycheck could behave predictably. Your employer mostly absorbed health care. A pension fund, not you, carried the market risk of your retirement. One income, in a lot of households, could carry a mortgage on its own. Higher education didn't require a second mortgage's worth of debt. Those weren't perks. They were load-bearing walls. Somewhere in the last 4 decades, ownership of that risk quietly changed hands. You still get the paycheck. You now also get the deductible, the market risk, the rate reset, the tuition balance. Nobody held a meeting to announce this. It happened the way most important things happen to adults, through the mail. Envelope 1, the premium Elena's older brother, Dev, is a self-employed electrician outside Sparks. Any month he doesn't work, he doesn't get paid, and neither does his family's health plan pause. Last summer he sat in his truck at lunch and ran the numbers on renewing his family's marketplace plan. The premium alone was close to what he pays to insure his work van. That's not a coincidence people like to joke about. It's structural. If you get insurance through an employer, they're covering a big chunk of a very large number without you ever seeing the sticker price. That invisible raise has been growing faster than wages for 2 decades. If you're on your own, like Dev, you feel the entire number, every renewal, with no employer standing between you and it. And recently, subsidies that used to soften that blow for people buying their own plans got smaller. So the premium goes up, or the deductible goes up, or both. And the coverage that's supposed to protect you from a bad year starts costing almost as much as the bad year would. Dev's line about it stuck with me. He insures his family for more than he insures the truck he makes his living in. Envelope 2. The escrow. This is the one that got Elena at her kitchen table. She has a fixed-rate mortgage. The whole point of a fixed rate is that you lock in the number, and inflation does the rest of the work for you over time. Except her payment isn't fixed, because property taxes and homeowners insurance ride along inside that payment, and both have been climbing hard in almost every part of the country. Not just the places you'd expect. Insurers have been repricing risk aggressively. Local governments have been repricing property values upward. None of that shows up as a new bill labeled rate hike. It shows up once a year as an escrow analysis that quietly resets what you owe every month, with no negotiation and no appeal process that actually works. You signed a fixed-rate loan. You got a variable-rate life. And if you're not a homeowner, don't assume renting is the easy door. Affordable starter homes have gotten so scarce that a large share of renters who'd like to buy simply can't, on any reasonable set of terms. And a meaningful chunk of purchases now happen in cash, which means when you lose a bid, you're often not losing to a better qualified buyer. You're losing to someone who doesn't need a lender in the room at all. Envelope 3. The payment. So if none of this shows up as an outright pay cut, where does the difference go? It goes onto a balance. Household debt in this country is enormous, but the total isn't the interesting part. The composition is. Watch auto loans specifically. New car payments have crept up to levels that rival rent in a lot of places, and the share of car loans that are seriously behind on payments has been climbing toward levels not seen since the aftermath of the 2008 crash. That number matters, because a car payment is usually the last thing a household lets slip. You need the car to get to the job that pays for the car. When that starts slipping for a lot of people at the same time, it's not a story about carelessness. It's a story about what's left after everything else already got paid. Two different agencies can look at the exact same lending data and describe it completely differently. One calls it broadly stable, another calls it record distress. Both are technically right, because averages get pulled upward by a shrinking number of households that are doing fine, while a much larger number of households underneath them are quietly falling behind. The averages stay calm. The middle does not. Envelope 4. The latter Elena's nephew, Theo, graduated last spring. He's applied to more jobs than he can remember the count of. He's not unemployed because he got laid off. He's unemployed because, in a lot of entry-level fields, the rung he was supposed to step onto has quietly gotten narrower or disappeared. It's tempting to blame this entirely on AI, and it's a little more complicated than that. Some of the roles people love to point to as replaced have actually grown in headcount. What's really happening is narrower. A lot of the small, repetitive tasks that used to make up an entry-level job have been automated or absorbed, which means companies don't need to hire as many junior people to do them. The tasks that remain get folded into the workload of whoever's already inside the building. That can look like job security from the inside. It can also look like doing two people's jobs for one person's pay. Nobody's dismantling the career ladder. They're just quietly removing the bottom couple of rungs and leaving the rest hanging there, technically intact, just out of reach for a 23-year-old with a fresh degree and 200 applications behind him. I want to steelman the other side here, because it's a real argument, and I don't want to strawman it. Elena and Dev's father worked the same trade Dev works now. One income, a house in the same county, 4 kids. On paper, both of his children out-earn him, adjusted for inflation. That's not spin. Median household income, adjusted for family size and inflation, really has grown substantially over the last several decades. And it's grown for lower-income households, too, not just the top. So there's a serious case that says incomes rose. This isn't decline. It's nostalgia with better lighting. Here's the piece that argument leaves out. Their father's job came with a pension and an employer health plan that he essentially never had to think about. He never priced a deductible, never rolled over a 401k, never sat with an escrow statement doing arithmetic on a phone calculator. His kids earn more than he did, and personally carry every one of those risks he never had to touch. Wages went up, but childcare, prescription drugs, and higher education have all climbed dramatically faster than wages over that same stretch. A raise on one side of the ledger doesn't mean much if the other side of the ledger grew 3 or 4 times as fast. And household wealth being at a record high doesn't help most households much, because stock and fund ownership is heavily concentrated at the top. When you see household net worth hits all-time high, that's an asset price record. It's a different animal from a paycheck record. And for a lot of people, it isn't describing their household at all. You didn't necessarily get poorer. You got less insured. Those are 2 different injuries, and only one of them shows up in the income statistics. Here's the cleanest place to watch this play out. Retirement account headlines. Every year, some outlet reports the average retirement balance, and it sounds encouraging, a healthy 6-figure number. What almost never gets reported next to it is the median, the number for the person exactly in the middle, which is dramatically lower. Same data set, wildly different story, because a relatively small number of very large balances drag the average way up, while a huge number of small or non-existent balances sit underneath it, invisible. The average describes a person who barely exists. Ask yourself honestly, which number